Hello again, everyone, and thanks once again for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, we've got on the hazardous weather graphic less shaded in areas than yesterday. In fact, the red area here, that's for continued flood warnings that are out, not for this entire area here, but for three rivers. Two rivers, and the other, the Salcia River, Salcia, and the Good Pasture. And those will remain out until about midday Sunday. That's due to the 2 to 4 inches of rain that's fallen. Really tapered off today. 6-hour amounts are really much lighter today, so it's all tapering off, kind of shifting to the east. But those showers won't end here over toward the eastern border. Anyway, still a flood watch out for the eastern Alaska range. There for the rivers on the eastern Alaska range, and that's out through midday tomorrow as well. For possible flooding, evidently flooding is occurring on those three rivers, the two rivers and Good Pasture and Salcia. And again, that's going to continue till probably, well, at least through tonight and into tomorrow morning. Down here, Haynesboro and Lynn Canal, high wind warning out for tonight, looking for north winds that are increasing here. Already blowing there, and they're expected gusts to 60 miles an hour overnight tonight into early tomorrow morning, and then diminish somewhat during the day. And pretty windy conditions across southern Alaska today, as well as areas higher elevations in the interior. Those north winds with high pressure building pretty strongly back here to the west and northwest of the state. Anyway, before we get to that, fire danger pretty extreme here, Susitna Valley, into the Matanuska Valley as well, and the Kenai Peninsula Anchorage area. We've got extreme fire danger. It kicked up due to the increase in the winds we had, and of course the very dry conditions, especially areas like Turnagain Arm are very dry. Also some extreme fire danger Valdez in along the North Gulf Coast and back into the Copper River Basin. Even though temperatures were down into the around 60 degrees this afternoon, but still in the approaching 80 degrees at Big Lake in the afternoon, only mid-70s now for the Kenai Peninsula, and that cooling trend is going to continue here for the next couple of days. Also some extreme fire danger here for northeast Bristol Bay, otherwise high to very high fire danger right on down, almost to, but not quite to Port Heidense, definitely Pilot Point, Kodiak Island, high to very high to even some areas of extreme fire danger there. And also up here due to the winds over the northern panhandle, Haynesboro and Lynn Canal. And for satellite imagery, a lot of clouds here developing and moving over the southeast coast today with rain, heaviest up here over the northern areas. Juneau at about roughly 3 to 4/10 of an inch, 12-hour period ending at mid-afternoon or so, but rain all the way down to Dixon Entrance. It was lighter down here in the southern areas, and things decreasing both precipitation-wise and cloud-wise here over the eastern interior. But we've got surges of moisture with weak disturbances dropping southward and northerly flow aloft here. And you can see another batch kind of hitting the eastern Brooks Range and enhancing there. Nothing too terribly heavy. I think only 1/100th of an inch measurable at Kaktovik during the day today. And again, ending at mid-afternoon. And some areas still had about 1/10 of an inch today, over towards, let's see, Delta Junction possibly, and some other areas, Indian Mountain had 1/10 of an inch, but that's all ending and pushing eastward slowly, but it's going to keep a chance of showers of that northerly flow aloft, high pressure building out here over the Bering Sea, and so the upflow coming up and over the top of that will keep a chance of showers over the eastern, or toward the eastern border through tomorrow, and it'll begin to dry out tonight over the Panhandle as that area moves off to the southeast. Frontal system out here to the west cannot make it any farther to the east. In fact, high pressure directing it back to the west and northwest, kind of up and over the top here, and some mid and high level clouds dropping in across the Bering Strait into the Seward Peninsula area. And we're seeing clearing begin to take place here along and off the coast. Northeast flow will continue to push clear skies out toward the Pribilof Islands. By tomorrow afternoon, you should be into some sunshine there. And otherwise, as I just mentioned, it's going to stay unsettled over the eastern Beaufort Sea coast and over toward the border, at least through, well, definitely tonight into tomorrow. On the chart today, a lot of sunshine here, south central Alaska. Another sunny day, but not as warm there for Kodiak Island. In fact, northerly winds cooled it off a little bit here. Still, as I mentioned, up toward 80 degrees at Big Lake, otherwise mid-70s to Sitna Valley, Kenai Peninsula area, Anchorage, and even cooler, though, over toward the Copper River Basin. Northerly winds gusting 40 miles an hour, actually 37 miles an hour at Gulkana today, and up to 53 miles an hour at Valdez, with Palmer seeing gusts to about 40 miles an hour, as well as Kenai had a gust of 41 miles an hour out of the north. So pretty windy conditions here, not so windy, still some higher elevations had gusty winds with freezing temperatures at mid-afternoon. If you're up about 2,500 feet or so, a couple of stations there, we're right at 32 degrees at about 2 p.m. this afternoon with gusty winds, 25 to 30 miles an hour. Otherwise, mostly just rain here over what fell in the form of rain at sea level, eastern Beaufort Sea coast. Get some elevation with that, might be mixed in or plain snow on down toward Eagle, but amounts much lighter, as I mentioned here, than they were yesterday over the last 24 hours. And we'll continue with a chance of showers here over the eastern border. And this low, actually a pretty wound up one, fairly wound up, down to 996 millibars tonight, and that's what's prompted the high wind warning out for the Haines area, Haynesboro and Lynn Canal due to the falling pressures here down toward Dixon Entrance and the building pressures up here over northern Alaska. You can see quite a few lines across the central and northern panhandle. Good for gusts to 60 miles an hour or so through tonight and then start to diminish tomorrow. Winds tonight will start to drop off here, but won't end completely for the North Gulf Coast, Copper River Basin, south central Alaska. And it'll be north to northeast breezes here. We'll begin to push that cloud deck back to the west. And tonight's really looking good here along the coast, Nunivak Island, St. Lawrence Island area. Stays dry, Kodiak Island, and that front continuing to take a beating and getting shoved back to the west there and then up and over the top. And some of this moisture, not so much tonight or tomorrow, kind of sneaks into the Russian Far East there. Clear tomorrow over the interior. Still a chance of showers, eastern Alaska range, Northway Tok, maybe Nebezna, and possibly along or east of the border. And by tomorrow, look for sunshine to advance southward into at least the central panhandle. And showers are still possible towards Stewart and Hyder into the afternoon, but it'll be dry elsewhere. Outlook for Monday. Sunshine, the panhandle and the interior. Some of that moisture slips into the Yukon Delta. And for lows tonight, near freezing, in the 30s, some cases maybe a little below over the eastern and northern interior here. Highs tomorrow, lower 70s, Bristol Bay, 65 to 70s to Sitna Valley, Kenai Peninsula. In the 50s for the eastern Tanana Valley, only 50 at Eagle for the high, and 50s to lower 60s for the panhandle, followed by lows upper 20s to mid 30s over the eastern interior, near 50 back to the west, and highs following day, mid 60s to Sitna Valley, and lower 60s in the central interior.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to aviation for tomorrow morning, lots of IFR Bering Sea Aleutians, but VFR along and off the southwest coast here, right on up Seward Peninsula and Norton Sound, Nunivak Island. Looks like the Pribilof zone, the IFR zone. VFR south side of the Alaska Peninsula. Good VFR right up into the interior. Some lingering marginal stuff here over the eastern Alaska range, maybe the Wrangell Mountains, IFR eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and a little bit of leftover marginal VFR over the southern panhandle. For tomorrow afternoon, that kind of stays put down there due to the low pressure area staying over that area there. So marginal VFR southern southeast coast, VFR up to the north. All of interior Alaska, VFR, and we got VFR now even farther to the west here due to the easterly flow. And looks like the Pribilofs will become VFR during the latter part of the afternoon. And marginal VFR central eastern Beaufort Sea coast, And again, this area of IFR, as I mentioned, pushing westward, but hanging in over the Aleutians, central and western Bering. And then for Monday morning, continues to retreat here, especially up through this area, but marginal VFR for the Fox Islands, IFR, AKwx on out to the Komodorskis. Good VFR, southwest coast, Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island. Northward again, interior looking really good. Possible IFR, eastern Beaufort Sea coast, and marginal VFR off the coast here. May just catch Montague Island on the south end. That's about it. Now, VFR all the way down to Dixon Entrance and beyond. And then for Monday afternoon, this area kind of creeps up towards, well, it looks like toward Yakutat and Cape St. Elias, which has a better chance than Yakutat of going marginal in the afternoon on Monday. VFR over the Panhandle. VFR holds here in the interior, Gulf of Alaska, Kodiak, southeast, or Bristol Bay. Nunivak Island looks like some marginal VFR makes it into the Yukon Delta possibly, and the north side of the Seward Peninsula through the Bering Strait, and marginal VFR eastern Beaufort Sea coast with IFR lurking right off the coast. And for the central western Aleutians, western Bering, continued IFR, and that stretches up right up across St. Lawrence Island to the Bering Strait. And for AKwx, looks like starting out marginal but becoming VFR. Probably by afternoon, if not a little before, but look, Adigan probably will stay marginal throughout the day. Enough moisture over there just east of AKwx, so I just went marginal throughout the day there for that pass. And Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR, either approach. Tomorrow, really good conditions, also for rainy and windy. Possibly, it could be marginal to start with, but optimistically, I just thought I'd go with VFR for the entire day, Sunday. And Isabel, though, starting out marginal, becoming VFR with more moisture over toward Isabel than it will be toward Windy. And Mentasta, there'll be even more moisture. So I'm holding it marginal VFR the entire day from Mentasta Pass. But Teneda back into the VFR. Portage, another VFR day there. And Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, quite a gradient here across the state now with the cold air kind of dropping into the Northwest Territories, 2,000 feet still over the Eastern Brooks Range, sloping up 10,000 Kodiak, which is about down 6,000 feet from yesterday, but still 14,000 feet here with that upper level ridge over the eastern Bering, southeast Bering, eastern Aleutian areas. And taking a look at, let's see, icing. Not much on here at all. This area, just a chance, probably the best chance there as a disturbance just clips the eastern Arctic coast. Could be light to isolated moderate rime icing above about 3,000 feet. This area east of the border now, but just to the east there, so it'll be kind of just a slight chance it would be into the Panhandle itself, but I don't think it'll be any problem at all. And the jet stream here, a couple of upper level lows coming southward. This one right in just near the southeast coast there, or it's actually in over the southern Panhandle, but the moisture will be east of the border. This one staying up to the north. Good flow here, 120 knot northerly jet right across southern Alaska, 90 knots back up to the northwest there. Upper level high over the Bering Sea, and the lows just to the south of the Aleutians. We got easterly flow there at about 70 knots. And for 9,000 feet, 10 to 25, strongest eastern Arctic coast, northeast flow here, 25 to 30 knots right into Bristol Bay, turning east, light 15 for the Aleutians, but up to 50 knots for the Aleutians, 30 to 35 at 3,000 feet, and for turbulence, moderate chop along the North Gulf Coast, central Aleutians.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider, and today I'm privileged to introduce Dr. Uccellini, the Director of the United States National Weather Service. Welcome back to Alaska, sir.
Thank you, Dave. Glad to be here.
Thanks. Prior to being the leader of the National Weather Service, your work included an extensive look at snowstorms across the northeastern United States. These are the types of storms that can bring some of the country's largest cities to its knees. Tell me a little bit about your fascination with snow.
Well, as far back as I can remember, I've always been interested in weather, growing up as a kid on Long Island, New York, and was particularly fascinated by snowstorms. Why they occurred, the distribution of snow was very varied across the entire region, the rain-snow line, all those things fascinated me right from the get-go. And I was interested in knowing how they worked, how the forecast worked, or more often than not, didn't work one way or the other. And that drove me, that interest continued to build and drove me through high school right into college, wanting to be a meteorologist.
Okay, that's a fascinating story, and I think every meteorologist has a weather story like that in some way.
Right.
Due to Alaska's size and proximity to the North Pole, sometimes it's difficult to detect and analyze the weather patterns over Alaska. What's the National Weather Service doing to improve that weather detection?
Well, observations in this type of environment is a big challenge, whether it's from space or from what we call in situ observations from the ground or within the systems. Clearly, satellites have been playing an increasing role in providing the big picture, not only from a visual sense and what you see is occurring, but also from providing the data for numerical models that then are used to actually predict the weather. Alaska is actually pretty well positioned with respect to polar orbiting satellites, since you get a faster return of those satellites over your particular area. And in fact, the polar satellite system is the backbone for the observations that we use in our models, especially our global models, and they're particularly important for observing weather features that affect Alaska.
Alaskans live and die by the weather every day, and one of the strategic goals of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the National Weather Service is to develop a more weather-ready nation. What does it mean for Alaskans to be weather-ready?
Well, the strategic outcome is based on people being ready, responsive, and therefore resilient to the increasing threats to extreme weather events. Those threats are related to not only the nature of the events, but the fact that we're becoming more vulnerable to them as we have more people, more infrastructure that could be affected by these events. So we have to ensure that the observations we make for situational awareness, the forecasts we make for people to take the proper responses are connected to people's actions, the response to these events, so that they will be more resilient to what's facing them. There are examples with respect to hurricanes. More people living along the coastline takes longer to evacuate. We have to make better forecasts with longer lead times, but we also have to communicate the threat so people will actually take action to avoid those storms. Up here you have, as in other parts of the United States, an increasing threat related to fire. As there are more people living in fire-prone areas, we have to ensure that our forecasts are good, that we don't have false alarms that make people not react to the forecast when in fact they should. But we also have to be able to communicate the threat and make sure that we're working with the partners in the emergency management community so that communities and right down to individuals will actually take the proper responses in the face of these events. So that's the strategic goal. There are a lot of challenges for us in terms of improving forecasts, but also improving our communication skills and linking with the emergency management communities that are actually out there trying to protect lives and mitigate property loss.
So a huge partnership effort going forward.
That's one of the important keys for the success of meeting the strategic goal.
Okay. One of the things you're talking about was understanding the weather information we're getting back from the computers, weather modeling, and you did a lot of work with that in some of your prior positions with the Environmental Prediction Center there, the National Center for Environmental Prediction. What can you tell us about recent improvements in that weather modeling? And you were using the polar orbiters as kind of a source of information that started that process.
Well, first of all, we have to recognize that everything you see, you read and hear about weather, climate, or ocean forecasts are all driven by numerical models. Now, it really has been the revolution in our forecast process in the last part of the 20th century. The success of that numerical enterprise is based on three factors: big computers, global data, not just local data, but you have to have a global data set, and then the models themselves, the science that's behind the models and in running the models in an operational mode. So we're working to improve all three of those components. We upgraded our computers last year. We're going through another upgrade even as I speak. We'll be upgrading from 200 trillion calculations per second to 700 trillion calculations per second by January of 2015. This increase in the computer will allow us to run what we call Earth system models. It's not just the atmosphere, it's the atmosphere, ocean, ice, which is obviously very important up here, and land models that are all coupled together at higher resolution. So you need the big computers, you need the science that allows us to run these models and run them in a parallel mode, and that they're coupled so that the ocean effects could affect the atmosphere and vice versa, as an example. And then the global observations are absolutely critical, and over the last 20, 30 years they've become more dependent upon the satellite systems, and especially the polar orbiting satellites, which help drive the observations needed for those models, whether they be atmospheric observations, land, ice observations. We're deriving more and more of that from satellites now that feed into these models and produce forecasts with extended lead times. Now out, for extreme events especially, we're seeing much improved forecast out in the 4, 5, 6, 7, and even 8-day range, which gets us back to Weather Ready Nation, because if you're going to get ready for a storm event, you want those consistent forecasts approaching that event from day 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, so you can take the actions several days in advance that can help mitigate the property loss and protect your livelihood.
Okay, all part of the mission of protecting life and property. Dr. Uccellini, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and speaking to Alaskans and sharing how the National Weather Service is working for Alaska and the nation. Wish you safe travels around the 49th. Enjoy your time here, sir. And for Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis. Still melting back to the north here, and as you can see, quite a ways off to the northwest of Wrangel Island from what we had yesterday, but we got some clear satellite imagery. So yesterday it was just a guess, and obviously we were in too close. But now it's back to the northwest there, continuing to melt slowly and a long ways off the coast. This area through here may come southward a little bit, and the remainder probably not any big changes anywhere, and even if there were, it wouldn't really affect anything down toward the coast. So coastal water forecast, gale warnings on the central north coast tomorrow. Northerlies 35 knots, seas 11 to 13 feet, north 30 on the south coast. Gales for Lynn Canal 35 out of the north with storm force gusts to go along with that high wind warning that kicks in tonight or this evening, and north 30 there for Stevens Passage, and Clarence Strait northwest 15. Outlook for Monday, much lighter winds, north 10 for Stevens Passage, east 15 to 20 on the south coast, east 15 on the north coast. Lynn Canal down to 20 knots, sustained out of the north, and you lose the gusts, and southeast 15 for Clarence Strait. Prince William Sound, north winds 25 knots, seas 6 feet, northeast 25 knots for the North Gulf Coast with 5-foot seas, and the Barren Islands, north winds at 20. And for Cook Inlet and Kamishak Bay, we've got northerly winds 25 knots with seas at 8 to 9 feet. Those will come down on Monday. Cook Inlet here south of the Forelands at about 20 knots. Northern Cook Inlet northeast 15. Northeast 20 for Kamishak Bay. Barren Islands northeast at 15. And east-northeast 10 to 15 knots for the North Gulf Coast. Northeast 15, seas 2 feet there for Prince William Sound. And then for Shelikof Strait, northeast 25 tomorrow, seas 8 feet, north 20, east side of Kodiak, and from Sitkinak to Castle Cape, north 20 knots, Alaska Peninsula northeast of 15, seas 4 to 5 feet, northeast 20, Bristol Bay with 4-foot seas. And then the outlook for Monday for Bristol Bay, north winds at 15, and the Alaska Peninsula, we've got northerlies in the forecast. Pretty light though, just 10 knots, and then 15-knot winds here out of the north, Castle Cape to Sitkinak, northeast 15 for Kodiak Island. Fox Islands tomorrow, east-northeast 15 to 20 knots, strongest on the Bering Sea side of the islands, and east 25, both sides of the islands there for north and south, Adak and Atka, and east 25 all the way out to Shimian at 2, and maybe even the Komodorskis. Outlook for Monday, gradient tightens a little here, so we'll kick it up to 30 knots west of Adak, all the way out to Chimien 2 with seas 10 to 11 feet. Otherwise, for the central Aleutians, east 20 knots, 5 to 8 foot seas, and east-northeast 10 to 15 for the Fox Islands with seas 4 to 5 feet, 4 to 6 feet. And for the southwest coast tomorrow, northeast 15 to 20 knots, northeast 20 for the Pribilofs, east 15 St. Matthew Island, north 10 St. Lawrence Island, northeast 15 for Norton Sound with 3 foot seas. Taking a look at Monday, northeast 15, Norton Sound, northwest 15 for St. Lawrence Island, and northerlies 15 knots, southwest coast across Nunivak Island, same thing for the Pribilofs, and maybe 20 knots there for, or it will be north 20 for St. Matthew Island, seas of 4 feet. Eastern Boulevard Sea Coast here over the demarcation point, east, west, west 15 to 20 knots, northwest 15 on the central coast, and the west coast here pretty light westerlies becoming variable to east from Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson. Out of these 10 knots, and then back around to the northwest, only 10 knots down to Wales, seas 2 to 3 feet. And then for Monday, northeast winds, Wales all the way up to Cape Beaufort, as well as the west side, say to Point Lay up to the central coast, variable to northwest at 10, and west-northwest 10 to 15 for the eastern stretch of the coastline. And for tonight, deepening low moves in just north of Dixon Entrance or so, building high pressure over the northern interior and the northwest here, northern Bering Sea. So we got quite a gradient across the southeast coast, especially the central and northern areas. High wind warning out tonight. Haynesboro and Lynn Canal, gusts 60 miles per hour, and then start to come down tomorrow. Pretty windy though into the central panhandle, but right under the low center, still a chance of rain, cloudy skies, much lighter winds. Diminishing winds southern Alaska, and dry lingering showers along the eastern border. Could be maybe mixed with snow, Brooks Range of the Arctic coast. And increasing sunshine. Look for a sunny afternoon for the Pribilofs tomorrow, and sunshine over the interior. Still a risk of a shower, eastern Alaska range. Most of this stuff will be into Canada, so increasing sunshine for the panhandle. That'll continue into Monday. Got to watch out for the moisture with this warm front, but I think it'll stay south of the area through Monday.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.